Bonjour, Kinamagi Nene Ireland Editionicast, and welcome to this production of Social Studies Explorer. Today's edition, The War in the North, Part 2. Before we begin discussing Valley Forge, let's look at the word splash assessment that came from our previous episode. They partnered the Battle of Saratoga with Turning Point. And as you recall in our Michigan Open book, Battle of Saratoga was one of those turning point battles. And it was considered a major turning point in the American Revolution. After the Americans won the battle, France decided to sign a treaty of alliance with the Americans. Valley Forge, winter of 1777, 1778. We're going to talk more about that in the upcoming days. This is where Washington's army camped through the winter of 1778. Not a good day. General Burgoyne and General Howe, both of these were British generals. And then General Gates and General Washington, both were American generals. Crossing the Delaware in the Battle of Trenton. The Battle of Trenton took place after Washington and his troops crossed the Delaware River. And Baron von Steuben, the Marquis de Lafayette, were two Europeans who came to help the Americans. You did not necessarily have to phrase it exactly the same as was phrased here. And I'm going to pause the video just long enough to scroll up to the top. Valley Forge is located in Pennsylvania. And to give you some idea of where, you can see Philadelphia is to the south and east. New York is to the much further to the north and east. What's now Maryland is to the south. And if you're scrolling in, we're starting to get into the area where there are plenty in the way of hills and mountains. Off to this direction here. Today we will be focusing on some diary entries. And part of this you will get a chance to do what we're going to talk about the sources. I will read them. And then you will be able to use your Google form to tell us what does it tell us about the winter at Valley Forge. Part of this, if you're in person, will be discussed in class, so you may have a chance to fill it out there if you're watching this ahead of time. I would recommend that. If you are doing this independently, after we read these sources, you'll want to go to the Google Classroom and answer that question. So the first one is from the diary of Alba Gents Waldo, a surgeon at Valley Forge, 1777. The date is December 14th, so if that tells us it's no longer, 75 degrees outside. It says, I am sick, discontented, and out of humor. Poor food, hard lodging, cold weather, fatigue, nasty clothes, nasty cookery, vomit half my time, smoked out my senses, can't endure it. Why are we sent here to starve and freeze? What sweet felicities have I left at home? A charming wife, pretty children, good beds, good food, good cookery, all agreeable, all harmonious. Here all confusion, smoke and cold, hunger and filthiness, a pox on my bad luck. There comes a bowl of beef soup, full of burnt leaves and dirt, sickish, away with it, boys. I'll live like a chameleon upon air. So that's going to tell you that it doesn't, I don't know if this is going to be on Yelp, it doesn't sound very good. So if you were using the Google form, if this is the spot, you will tell us, what does it say about Valley Forge? Feel free to re-listen to each part as I am reading them, because it isn't written in the same spellings that we may spell today. So let's look at source 2, George Washington to the Continental Congress, 23 December 1777. So just a couple days before Christmas and almost 200 years before I was born. I am now convinced beyond a doubt that unless some great change suddenly takes place, this army must inevitably starve, dissolve, or disperse. in order to obtain subsistence in the best manner they can. Rest assured, sir, this is not an exaggerated picture, but that I have abundant reason to support what I say. 3 or 4 days of bad weather would prove our destruction. What then is to become of the army this winter? What if we continue to have irregular supplies all winter? What is to become of us in the spring? So, this is the second source that you'll be discussing. And what does this tell us? We see things about starving and dissolving. Um, this is from General Washington. Talks about their possible destruction. Source 3, Military Journal of George Ewing, from page 25. From here, we marched to the Valley Forge in order to take up winter quarters. Here we built huts in the following manner. The huts are built in 3 lines, each line 4 deep, 5 yards asunder. The hut's 18 by 16 feet long, 6 feet to the eaves, built of logs and covered with staves, the chimney in the east and the door in the south side. The officer hut in the rear of the men's 12 men in each hut, and 2 corps of officers in a hut. So, what does this tell us about Valley Forge? Source 4, Lieutenant William Barton of the 4th and later the 1st New Jersey Regiment, to his father, Gilbert Barton of Allentown, New Jersey. Camp Valley Forge, February 18th, 1778. I should rode oftener, but have been in expectation of coming home, but this day find my expectations blasted, and have no manner of hope to get home until April. I received my coat and boots by Captain Wyckoff, and I am informed you have procured me some shirts, which I am extremely glad of, as I shall be in great need of them in a short time. I am at the present time in health, and hope these may find you all in perfect health. If to reverse at any time, please to give me intelligence thereof, and I shall come home at all events. I have not received a letter from you since at home, and should be very glad to be favored with a few lines of convenient, and likewise a few pounds of sugar and a little chocolate. There is a scarcity of these articles in this place. Camp does not very well agree with me. At this point, I would like you to go into the Google form within our Google Classroom and tell us what you learned about Valley Forge. Tell us what each source tells us about the winter at Valley Forge. We will be going into a Michigan Open Book section um, in an upcoming session, but this kind of gives you an idea of what the feeling is before we even cover Valley Forge in more detail. If you have any questions, please reach out to me, and you're welcome to share ideas with your peers if this is where you're watching the video. Discussion is a good thing when we're talking history. Hope you all have a minute. Minwa, Bama P.